So let's take the reverse.
Sure.
Let's take the woo-wah guy. You know that.
Too invincible.
Yeah. Well, I really try my best, and sometimes I fall into it, but I try my best not to go like, I'm gonna fuck that guy up.
Uh-huh.
You know, like I'm gonna get out of my car.
Yeah.
And I have.
Sure.
Sure. I have gotten out of my car.
Sure.
It's something I battle. It's something I'm working on. But like, you know I can't. I can't take that position for long. You know what I mean? And so, but there are guys out there, and I know them. Like I know some of them that will go like, "I'll fuck you up." Like, but they're telling themselves that. You know, like, and they don't realize that they are fragile.
Yeah.
They have they've convinced themselves that they could take on the world.
Sure.
And so whether they can or they can't, I think that those guys too are assholes, a burden.
Well, they're also at risk. Like it not only is that true, but they're at tremendous risk. I think you saw a guy get stabbed. Did you not see a guy get stabbed?
Yeah.
Like, I've seen.
He died in my arms.
Yeah, no one's died in my arms, but I've seen people get stabbed.
Yeah.
Not after they got stabbed. I've seen people get stabbed.
Yeah.
And it's not good.
Yeah.
It's not good.
So how do we curtail that mentality? How do we, in the martial arts training, sort of confront that or rather than let it slip into arrogance?
Mm-hmm. It's the hard training. I mean, you're saying how or why? What is it?
How? Like, I mean,
I
like
think,
the hard training, a lot of guys take the hard training.
Yeah, I don't
and
think it's hard enough.
Yeah.
I just don't. You know, there's mental illness. Like, let's not leave out mental illness.
Right.
Like, there's
a lot of it.
Yeah, there is always mental illness, but let's put mental illness aside, extreme mental illness aside. I don't think it takes long from white belt to Shodan.
Black belt.
Yeah, for someone to figure out that they're not invincible, immortal, or indestructible. And whether it's like at the hands of someone else, whether it's they've gotten knocked out, punch, kicked, elbowed, kneed, etc., or they've just hurt themselves. They just hurt themselves in the course of the pursuit of the cultivation of their own mind, body, and spirit. They've sustained injuries, and they find out, like, you know what, I'm delicate, I'm fragile. Like, on the one side of the pendulum, as much as I'm not porcelain and I'm tough and I'm tougher than I've ever been, on the other side, I'm still fragile, delicate, and vulnerable. You know, my eyes haven't really gotten much tougher.
That's why I said the path of the master's precept.
Mm-hmm.
It is that pendulum.
Yeah, I think so.
And I think he knew that.
I think so.
Yeah, like your hands are swords.
Yeah.
And your feet are weapons. Like, and so if that's true, the reverse has got to be true.
Yeah. So here's a good one. And this is like, again, you know, forgive me because people are all, you know, it's very easy to be offended, but try not to be, because I have a wife and 2 daughters and
a son.
And what I have found is that when you put a weapon in a woman's hands or a weapon in a girl's hands, they become Joan of Arc in an instant. In an instant. Like all the bullshit about like nonviolence and enlightenment and kumbaya.
Buddy, the person who
taught you footwork,
coached me to my first nationals. She was
deadly.
Buddy, she would knock the crap out of me.
I bet.
I mean, kick and punch the shit out of me.
So something unlocked for her.
Yeah.
You know, and this is here's some ways that happens. And I don't know her story.
Yeah.
But
how does it have to do with the arrogant side of this
It has a
coin.
lot to do. Well, let's just unpack the idea of
Joan of Arc.
yeah. Sometimes something horrific happens, and a woman goes from being a worrier to a warrior
Yeah.
in an instant
Yeah.
because something unspeakable has happened.
Right.
Sometimes something unspeakable has happened, and they go from being a warrior to more of a warrior.
Yeah.
And you
Certainly.
would understandably so. But often there's a trauma that will flip
Happens
someone
for
over
men
to
too.
everybody. This is
Yes.
not a but I do find that same thing with a guy, like he's having trouble figuring out like the idea of all this punching and kicking, and I'm not very powerful, and it's going to take a long time before I'm able to generate any kind of a velocity, etc. My punch is weak. I hit the bag and it's obvious, and I've hit people as hard as I can, and all it does is hurt my hand. Put a sword in their hand and they're Conan. Like instantly. Like you put a weapon in a martial arts practitioner's hands and a transformation occurs. And it's beneficial.
You know, I'm the complete opposite.
Mhm. Mhm.
I've never desired.
I don't think it's a matter of
bypassed me.
desire though. Yeah. I don't think it's a matter of desire. Like,
Buddy, when you taught me the nunchuck kata and when you taught me the bow form, the thing I was worried most
is
about
hitting yourself in the head.
killing myself.
Sure,
You know how many times I hit myself in the damn head?
Sure. But you didn't have to think on 7 levels of abstraction that your hands are already deadly. I think
Maybe.
you've been aware of this for a long time.
Yeah, but like I never pursued. I'm not trying to.
No,
I think you got a strong point. I'm just making a kind of side thing. Like
I completely
it bypassed
agree with
me.
you. Yeah, I completely agree. Where my solution to the problem is that everyone gets that treatment, whether they need it or not,
Right.
because it's
an education, right?
It's safe and effective. It actually is safe and effective. In other words, if you don't need this treatment, it's not going to harm you.
Right.
But if you need this treatment, it's going to help you.
Right.
So it actually is safe and effective. So I like to put weapons in students' hands early in the training. You know what they rarely say? They rarely say, "Oh, when are we going to spar? When are we going to spar?" But when they learn their barehanded skills and they're frustrated because they look over and they think to themselves, my technique is not very clean. I'm not very coordinated. My form is very sloppy. But I know I could beat the shit out of that guy right over there.
Yeah.
So when are we going to spar, sensei?
Right.
Right? No one ever asks that when you put a sword in their hands. Now, if you put a bamboo sword in there, if you put a shinai in their hands and you show them like a bird cage they could put on their head, then they're all in. Then they're like, when are we going to spar? But there's usually a very perverse understanding of how kendo correlates with kenjutsu.
Right.
In other words, like in the skirmish, every single strike
Certainly.
is deadly.
Certainly.
And people who understand kendo understand that. They don't think it's you hit me in the cage 25 times and I only hit you 20 times. You won. You follow?
Yeah.
Each encounter.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's dead.
So when you put a sharp sword though, or a heavy piece of wood in someone's hand, and they start to wield it, rarely do they think to themselves, let's do 3 rounds. They often think to themselves, this would really suck.
So you think that
You hope it will, but there's another side. I don't mean to complete your sentence.
No.
There's the other side of it. Like you put a cop through the academy, and at the end they're awarded their 9mm, and there's no more calisthenics. There's no more PT. There's Dunkin' Donuts, and they live their lives hiding behind a 9mm.
See, that's what I'm getting at. That's what I'm getting at in
Yeah.
terms of the martial arts,
You
kind of
can
like the
pervert it.
arrogant.
You can pervert anything.
Yeah. But how do we say someone doesn't really want to pervert it?
Mm-hmm.
Like I think the traps that I've walked into in my life,
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't fully conscious, man. I wasn't like, I had to make those mistakes to awaken to like,
Yes.
oh, this is not how I really want to be.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I had to make those mistakes. I wish I didn't, but I did.
Yes.
And so I think I'm from that perspective, like, you know, what's like the Aesop's fable of this portion, like, you know what I mean? Like the word to the wise here.
What I would say to you is I think it's perfect that you've made clear that you've sort of had to pay a small price to learn your lessons.
Some of them were not small.
So okay. But when we talk swords are the learning of a lesson that you can't afford to experience. You see, like, how many times do I have to cut off your head before you figure out duck? So there's no abstraction. In other words, the weapon right away.
So do you think that jujitsu, martial arts, is abstract in a way that it affords people the perversion? Like there are a lot of guys out there.
Again, everything is like if you don't wanna learn the lesson, like I can't math my kid.
Mm-hmm. I see.
I can't math my kid. My kid's, my son's 5.
Right.
And he's far from stupid. He's a smart kid. But if he doesn't want to get mathed, nobody's gonna math him. He has to want to learn math. Like I send him to Kumon but he's got to want to learn math. I can't math him.
Yeah.
Now, I can like say, okay, you have 5 fingers, Kirkson, and now you have 4.
Right.
Right? That's 5 minus 1. Right? This one's gone. And if he's hard-headed enough and obstinate enough, like he'll still not learn the lesson. Do you follow my point? In other words,
I do.
While experience is the best teacher, there comes a point where you've got to be a better student. And where even though experience is the best teacher, sometimes imagination is even more potent and powerful. I'll give you an example. Like, I remember the first time I had my nose broken. And I was very afraid to have my nose broken, right? And you know what happened after I had my nose broken the first time? You know what I realized? It's not so bad. It's not so bad. So, and it wasn't so bad. You've been knocked out?
Yeah.
Yeah. You saw birds. You ended up at the beach. Right?
I did.
Everybody sees
Purple
birds, ends up
star.
at the beach. Yep. Okay.
I ended up at the beach.
Okay. There's a level to that where it actually becomes not only something you want to avoid, it becomes desirable. There's a level of brain trauma that becomes desirable.
Yeah. I laugh because I got knocked out and I was on the beach with my mom drinking pina coladas, buddy.
Yeah, sure.
And like I saw the Big Lebowski.
There you
and
go.
that scene where he's like floating, I was just so hysterical.
Sure.
And it's like, oh yeah,
it's
not so bad.
It's not so bad. It's not so bad. It's not so bad.
Yeah, I laugh at that.
But I tell you, like to this day, the idea of having my head removed from my neck is bad. Now, you could tell it's never happened, right? Like obviously I've never had my head removed from my neck. I've never been decapitated.
Yeah.
So the idea of that.
So you don't think that like the pendulum swinging on this idea that hands are sword and feet to the side where you realize like you could get hurt is, I think I'm answering my own question, but is enough?
Let's answer it out loud. So
well, I guess you're right. Like I had to experience like someone punching me in my face. Like you're not all that tough. Bang. And going like, oh, and shutting my mouth. And like I guess it's, I don't know if it's the only motivator, but it certainly is a motivator for someone second guessing whether they should get out of their car or not. You know?
So,
and what I mean by that is like, some traffic, someone gets lippy.
You stepped on my foot. You stepped on my foot.
Yeah.
Like it's the childhood equivalent
right.
of you stepped on my foot. I just don't want my daughter coming home from school going, I stuck my thumb deep into another young lady's eye because she was talking about my boyfriend. I don't want that. However, I do want my daughter, if someone ever puts her in true jeopardy and where her physical well being or mental well being is really at stake, I certainly want her to protect herself.
Yeah.
And there is a time and a place for her
Yeah.
putting her thumb in somebody's eye,
Yeah.
but not over someone stepped on my foot or
Mhm.
somebody said something.
Mhm.
There was someone made a comment about you, daddy, and I
Mhm.
was defending your honor. Like, I
Mhm.
don't want to live with that.
Mhm.
Sweetheart, you don't have to defend my honor. My honor is either
But you
intact or
don't want
not
her coming
intact.
home and and finding out that daddy's no more because he was too arrogant.
Well, daddy fought over a parking spot.
Yeah.
Daddy's now
No,
on
dead.
a slab.
Yeah.
Which we all know stories about this. Like I've talked about this before. Like a kid I grew up with, I went to school with. He wanted to learn Filipino martial arts, and I studied Filipino martial arts extensively. And I wanted to. Here's an example of a misunderstanding. So I went straight to the blade in the instruction as a way of saying, look, this is deadly. This is dangerous. Like, this is not a game. This is not, like, we press reset if things don't go our way. Well, long story short, he was bouncing up at Hunter Mountain and there was an incident outside on the steps, and he got hit in the spleen with a right hand. What he didn't know is that what was in the right hand was like a 2.5 inch long punch dagger. And it went in. Another friend of mine, I don't want to mention
Right.
names, I just don't have their permission, he caught his friend, his best friend, and within like 30 seconds he bled out, he was dead. Bled out internally. Dead. Now, to me, that's an example of I will never forgive myself because I always think to myself, my intentions were to demonstrate how deadly the blade is. And not only is the blade deadly, but like, I don't want you punching me in the liver. Because if you punch me in the liver, it's not necessarily going to destroy my liver, but it's going to shut it down long enough for your shin to end up across my skull. And then if you're not a good guy, you're a good guy. But if you weren't a good guy, like, I don't want you stomping my gold fillings out of my back teeth.
Mhm.
But you very easily could do that,
Mhm.
right? All started with a well-timed, effectively thrown liver shot. I'm in big trouble. Anyway, this guy didn't understand that. He misinterpreted my intention. And this goes back to like, there's a lot to be said for quality instruction.
Mhm.
Not enough to be said and should be said about quality learning. Like
That's right.
parenting, and I'm going to say this because I am a parent. I feel like I have the moral authority to say it. Parenting is overrated. Childing is underrated. Teaching is overrated.
Learning.
Learning is underrated.
I said this yesterday in the class. Like,
Yeah.
this is not just the study of martial arts. It's the study of the art of being a student,
Yes.
of being a senpai, a
Yes.
kohai.
And to take that approach in life, it's
Yeah.
like I don't want to divorce myself of the responsibility in my learning and blame what. For example, I think when you taught the high leg recovery last week,
Yeah.
I'm
For those
watching.
of you who don't know, it's a guard recovery.
So cross-side bottom,
Yeah.
you're pinning me, you're cross-side on top, I'm on the bottom, and I could either recover the low leg and replace my guard,
Mhm.
or I could use the high leg and either just recover my regard or take the arm lock. And
Right.
I'd learned that move.
Right.
Okay, strike that. I was taught that move in like 1997.
Right.
I can remember being taught the move. And when I saw you teach the move, I thought to myself, I wasn't taught that move properly. because I'm
Right.
irresponsible.
You didn't learn
Well,
it.
I realized that my first instructor, who's extraordinarily qualified, extraordinarily capable, I happen to know did not teach me the move wrong. I
Right.
learned it wrong.
Right.
But I had this moment where I wanted to blame for close to 30 years I've been doing this move unsuccessfully. Not because he taught me the move wrong. I learned it wrong. But oh, how convenient it is to want to blame it on him
Right.
rather than me.
Right.
So this is another challenge. So we go back to this precept, this idea, this principle of treat the hands, treat the feet, the arms, the legs, the limbs like swords. It has a plethora of meaning. But if I'm not willing as the student to decipher its meaning, to embrace its meaning, and understand it on both ends of the spectrum, you can't teach it to me.
Right.
Because
You're unwilling.
well, I'm good idea resistant. And if you're good idea resistant, there's nothing you can do.
You know how many times he's told me that as my friend, you're good idea resistant.
Yeah, I'm talking to myself.
It haunts me, buddy.
I'm really talking to myself. Right? I think it's a beautiful principle. And again, so when a student is, and I don't like to use the word performing kata. I don't think we perform kata.
Right.
When we are engaged in the training modality known as kata, I should be trying to cultivate my strikes, my kicks, as though they had the same deadly, potent potential as a thrust with a sword or the cut of a sword. That should be the level that I want to bring my technique to. I should be thinking in my defensive maneuver, my block, my footwork, my evasive technique, that I'm not evading a substandard technique that will bounce off me. I'm evading a strike that is potentially deadly.
That's right.
Another good paradigm is my barehanded skills at minimum. It's flesh and bone against wood, and it's wood against steel. So if I'm training my bow kata, if I'm working with a bow,
right,
I'm not thinking
about
it's
the sword.
Yeah, it's not bow on bow. It's
Right.
bow on sword.
Right.
And it's just a better paradigm.
Yeah, I see
And
that.
and again, now we get delusional, and we should be careful not to. This goes back to the dysfunction of multiple attackers.
Yeah.
And we don't.
It's another place where I never really like it.
Yeah, I just don't think we want to get lost in that soup.
Yeah, man.
But I do think it's a nice thing to consider, but it's not an excuse to fall back on.
Right.
In other words, I don't need to learn jujitsu. And the reason I don't need to learn jujitsu is because,
there's multiple attackers.
Yeah.
I'm not going to.
What you really mean to say is you don't want to learn jujitsu.
Right.
And you're resting on the excuse of multiple attackers.
Right.
I think you do well to learn some jujitsu.
Right.
And deal with, let's solve one problem at a time.
Right.
But it's a trap. It's an easy delusion to fall into. You want one more distinction, please, is Vince Black, very, very passed about 2 years ago. Tom Bizzio's first instructor.
Your second instructor, right?
Correct? Yeah. Tom Bizzio was my second teacher. He was
Vince Black is your first, or Ruben Prett?
Ruben Prett's my first teacher.
Right.
Ruben Prett was a training partner / junior of Tom Bizzio.
Okay.
When I was thrown out of my first instructor school for breaking the rules,
right,
for abusing my skills,
right,
in many of the ways we're ridiculing right now,
right.
I'd gone to Tom Bizzio, and what his teacher Vince Black said was the difference between combat sports and martial arts is in combat sports you get to believe things after they happen. And in the martial arts, you have to believe things before they happen. Now, it's just a guy who can't do combat sports talking. No, I beg to differ. I think when it comes to blades and bludgeons, you do well. Blades, bludgeons, and bullets. You do well to believe the damage before it manifests.
Happens, right?
Yeah, you got to believe it before it happens.
Right.
So now one of the beauties of combat sports is you get to believe it after it happens. Like, oh, I guess I didn't slip that punch.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you're right. I guess I was dropping my hands. I only broke my nose. But again, with the sword, you didn't only break your nose.
Mm-hmm.
You lost your head,
Mm-hmm.
not figuratively, but literally. So I think that changes people's approach.
Yep. Good point. Really good. Tom, thank you very much. That was amazing. I want to say, like, I think that hearing your dialogue about being fragile, even though we're training the martial arts in a very serious way, has helped me to navigate some very difficult pitfalls or potential pitfalls. I have suffered some, but not all, thanks to some of the dialogue, some of the things that I learned from what you were teaching. And I really appreciate it.
Well,
thank you, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you, Shane.
Thank you for listening to the Gentle Art Podcast. Please share, rate, and review. And if you have any questions or you'd like to reach out, please contact us at the GentleArtPodcast@gmail.com or contact us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter or thegentleartpodcast.com.